Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Healed podcast. Today, we're going to be covering the heartbreaking story of 11-year-old Jayden Lee Meek. He's from Roodepoort in South Africa, and this is an innocent boy whose life was tragically cut short, allegedly at the hands of his own mother, Tiffany. And this case is still ongoing. So, we're going to be delving into a timeline of events, what has happened, and how this occurred. Elif, how are you doing today?
Good to be back. Just very heavy-hearted with regards to this case. I mean, we've been waiting to receive any news about what's happened to him. What I mean, just the horror. And for months, since May, this incident occurred in May, and things have just been quiet. But fortunately, police, they have been investigating. Obviously, they can't tell us everything that's happening. They need to investigate thoroughly, especially if they want a prosecution. And now
Mm.
on Friday, just receiving news that a woman's been arrested. I just knew and my heart dropped.
Mm. Mm.
Uh,
Mm.
I'm really glad that we did this
Um,
today, and share his story.
yeah, we're going to be definitely, and Jayden, like you said yesterday, is telling his story through these events. Just initially, when I looked at some of her interviews, I don't know what your perspective on the energies were, but we can definitely go back into that maybe a little bit later after the timeline,
Yeah.
just to discuss what you felt around that. Because for me, there was something amiss there. When she gave some of her interviews, I think it was ENCA. But let's get into the timeline to see how this occurred. So Jayden Lee was a student at the Royal College in Florida. This is in Roodepoort, which is an extension of Johannesburg in South Africa. He went to school on that day, the 13th of May, and then he returned home from school around 4 p.m. So there is a minibus that dropped him off, and he never made it to the apartment. That is what we know. So his mother reported him missing only later, way later. That was around the evening, around 9 or 10 o'clock. Now, that already, from 4 o'clock in the afternoon till about 9 o'clock, that's a 5-hour window. And then, apparently the South African police services, they did initiate a search, but then on the 14th, the following morning, his body was discovered on a staircase within the complex where they lived. That's the Roodepoort complex. And his body was still clean. It was warm, according to reports, and it had visible abrasions. So it wasn't clear. The reports didn't say who found the body, but his body was discovered on a staircase within the complex. And the following day, which is May the 14th, police began the search of different apartments. They went around to different neighbors just to find some information. And now we know, according to police reports, that they did actually find evidence on that day. And this is all going to be coming out in, we had no knowledge, like even for the last 2 months, we were all waiting with bated breath, just to see how this was going to unfold, because there was nothing at all until last week when a suspect was arrested. So fast forward from May the 14th, when the police started the investigation, there was a whole 2-month period. Last week, on the 11th of July, his mother, Tiffany Meek, was arrested as a suspect in the case. And then on Monday, she was July the 13th, Tiffany Meek appeared in the magistrate's court at Roodepoort. So she was charged with obstruction of justice, criminal injuria, amongst others. And obviously the community, who really, really supported her, there was a huge outcry from the community. And July 14th, we know that a bail hearing was set for Friday, July the 18th. So that is just a little recap
Yeah.
of this case.
Sorry, Ruth, I just want to make a correction because it's something I came across. Naturally, you would think she shares her son's surname, but her surname is apparently different. And I mean, my surname's different to my
Yes,
son,
correct.
so I get that. I think it's Tiffany Dunn, something like that, and Jayden Lee, her son was
Mm,
Jayden Lee Meek. So I just want to make that correct.
Jayden Lee Meek.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, yes.
Um,
So Jayden has his father's, thank you for that, Ela, has his father's surname. And Tiffany, she does, sorry, it says here Tiffany Meek, but she does have a different surname, correct.
yes.
100% correct. So I know that from just looking at the perspective of key developments, forensics, they came up with a report from the South African Police Services to say that Jayden passed due to blunt force trauma to the head. And there was blood evidence which confirms that the killing took place inside of the apartment. Again, this is all alleged. This is what is going to be coming out over the coming weeks. And then other key developments, when I look at initially how Tiffany was supported by the community, so many people came in from different areas to help look for Jayden during those couple of hours. And then there is so many different organizations. I'm trying to think of the name now that came to support her. And when Jayden's body was found, again, she criticized the South African police services, for not doing their job properly. There's so much that happened. And now I know that, she's been charged with obstruction of justice. And the community response, I think we need to focus on that because there's been a massive public outrage, including marches and protests, etc., demanding accountability for what's happened here.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts, Ella?
Well, naturally, the police came under a lot of scrutiny because the community came out to the house, to the complex, and wanted to know why the police wasn't there. So I'd be very interested to know, because the videos we saw where the community was there and along with social workers, that looked to me like it was during the day. It's wintertime now in South Africa. It goes dark around 6:30. So I'd be curious to know how the community found out that he'd gone missing, and were they there before the mother went to go and report it? Or did they arrive the next day? Because I know they were there during the daytime. I suppose it was the next day. That's what I'm assuming at this point, that they didn't get there on that day, because she only went to go and report it at night. So
Yes, late at night.
there was a lot of outcry because the community felt like the police wasn't investigating. And I was really concerned because there was a lot of people in and out of that complex. I was concerned about contamination because community members were going from complex to complex, asking people if they can look through their apartment, and most of the residents allowed them in. But the interesting thing is, they're claiming, detectives claim that they didn't want them to look through her apartment, which is a really interesting thing. And she works from home. So it's not like she was out at work, came home and realized the boy wasn't at home. She was at home. She then waited the entire day. It was almost like 2 hours before midnight, approximately, when she went to go and report it. And then she went to sleep at her mother's house, which to me is a major red flag, because my child is not home. My mother will come and stay with me. My aunt will come and stay with me. We're not leaving my house. So that was a strange.
Yes, absolutely.
It seems like there was a hell of a lot of time to cover something up here. And as though that was supposed to be an alibi. There's a lot of red flags here. Obviously, it's all alleged at this point, but there are a lot of red flags. And the scrutiny under which it was this perfect drama to point fault towards the police, knowing that she didn't even want them to investigate her flat. And one of the women from one of these organizations, she did an interview saying, well, the fact that she didn't want them to look through her flat should have been a red flag, but police, they're not really just allowed to come into your property without a warrant. So I'm sure that was a red flag for the police, but they had to do their due diligence. And I just want to commend the police, because I know that there are many, many instances in which they drop the ball. And the community can become quite frustrated because we want things to be done immediately, we want action to be taken immediately. But if evidence is not collected in a professional manner and in accordance with preserving, like, an investigation has to be done thoroughly for a prosecutor to even allow it into court. There are many cases.
Absolutely.
Yes, there are many cases where people have experienced awful things, and those cases haven't gone to court because there wasn't enough evidence. So the fact that she's been arrested and this is going to court lets me know they've got a hell of a lot of evidence. And it's heartbreaking because the community came together, which is beautiful. I think they would have done it anyway. It's such a testament to our people. Did the funeral. There's a gentleman that did the funeral, and apparently the mother gave him such grief. So he already was suspicious of what's going on. And the community, the people that came from far and wide to do the protesting, to ask for action to be taken, because why are we not hearing anything? Evidence was found. Why is the community not hearing anything? But think about the delicacy, how fragile this is, that the accused is the mother. It's devastating. And so obviously this case had to be handled with so much care.
Yeah, the police could definitely, they had to take their time and obviously work with the community. There is a report that I read that said that dogs were used specifically to collect evidence. And according to one of the investigators, again, this is all alleged, this is just what we've got from the different reports, there was forensic evidence. So like you said, Edith, there would not have been an arrest if there was not sound evidence, a watertight case, because the police, they have initiated this investigation. We didn't hear anything. There was nothing in the media about these are the developments. The only thing that happened was last week, which was almost a 2-month gap. So they've been really busy. Yeah. And I second that, commending the South African police services, because the information that has come out so far, it is absolutely horrific. And yesterday we touched on.
I don't think that they were very intelligent. I don't think it was, he went missing in the complex. She was at home. I'm a mother, right? If I know my child comes home at a certain time, I'm watching the clock. You must see me at home here. If my son's not home at a certain time, I'm putting my shoes on. I'm saying to my daughter, "Do you think I should go and take a walk?" She's like, "Relax, mommy. He's going to be home. Give it another 15 minutes, right?" So she's at home. It's not like she's not there. That was the first red flag. Everybody sees him going in, and then nobody sees him coming out. But his deceased body is found on the stairwell outside of her door. Right? So they didn't think this through. That it was really not well thought through. And the detective in the interview was saying they found bloody towels and cloths and his underwear from the day before. All the evidence was in the apartment. And his blanket, his bedding that he was wrapped in and he was put under the bed. There's obviously traces of blood. And we do have people who do blood analysis. So they would have seen what would have happened. They'd be able to put the story together. So all the evidence was in the flat. There was ammonia
Mm.
used and handy Andy, but
And
when
bleach.
yeah,
Mm.
when you try and clean blood up, it actually becomes more evident, and they used a UV light. So yes, the dogs led them there, but then they found all these traces of blood in the flat. The body's found right outside of the door. They really didn't try very hard. And I think that, yeah, just taking advantage of the
This
condition.
is a clear obstruction of this is a clear obstruction of justice. I mean, she thought that she was very meticulous, and again, this is all alleged, like you're saying. Um, there was definitely a cleanup process. So this is definitely, there's a lot of thought that went into it. And like you said, Elif, you're totally right. Blood contains a lot of iron. So even though she used the handy Andy and the bleach and all of that, there is still, when they put on the UV lights, everything is going to come to light. So you can mock all you want, but that evidence is still going to be there. And you're right, this wasn't thought out at all. When I look at the timeline, and it only occurred to me last week when the report started surfacing, as a mother, you don't wait 5 hours to report something. If my child is not missing or home within that half an hour, I'm going to be calling the school. I'm going to be driving to the school to see where my child is, because we have a rule here, and I'm sure Jayden must have, he needs to go home first. That's normally the norm for children. So waiting 5 hours to report that your child is missing, that is just, like you said, that's total red flag. Absolutely.
So even if, look, with the waiting, there's a lot of, I mean, there are so many different scenarios we can imagine. She could say, I was
Mm.
looking, whatever. But the fact of the matter that all of that evidence was found in our house, that he was definitely murdered in that complex, and in that, it was there. She was there.
Mm.
Body outside, his lifeless body found right outside of her door the next morning. She didn't sleep at her house, but there was a couple of hours between him arriving home from school and her reporting it, having all that bloody the towels and his underwear and everything, and his body was washed, and clean underwear was put on for him as well, and then put outside of the apartment. Yes, it's alleged, but I mean, seriously, that's a lot of just how can you think? It's impossible. It's heartbreaking. It's really heartbreaking because the first person I saw interviewed was her brother. And when I read
Mm.
his energy, and I often say, Ruth, I don't do any psychic readings when it comes to cases, because the soul, it dishonors the entire process. I think the only reason you would do that is for sensationalism, or to make a devastating crime, someone's death, a topic of discussion for sensationalism. I don't do it at all, because the soul has to tell their
Mm.
own story. The soul will reveal things in their own time, and there is a way in which things are supposed to happen. And I think that the impact here is massive, because we need to get really real about the level of toxicity and abuse against children at the hands of
Mm.
men and women. And that when it's at the hands of men, and you and I have spoken about this many times, there is usually a woman enabling it. Whether she did this or not, it happened in her home. She's not working. It's not like she was not there. She was there. She said she was there waiting. If she didn't do it, who did it? In her apartment, where she was. How does she leave her apartment? How does this happen? How is he there all night long, hidden? And she doesn't know, and she goes and sleeps at her mother's place. And when I
Mm.
when I watched the interview with her brother, I read his energy. It was like a
Mm.
stranger talking about a child from another family. And when I, and hers, but I thought, okay, well, maybe they weren't that close. You tell yourself these things. Her interview, it's like when I saw Kelly, Jocelyn Smith's mother at that Spur interview, and I could see this person is definitely on drugs because there is no emotional presence there at all. This person is so detached. And to me, that immediately lets me know the environment the child must have grown up in, and that the mother would then have some sort of involvement. So I knew that. In this case, with Jayden's mother's interview, I could tell by the lack of emotion. I could tell by how she giggled every now and then. I could tell by how she was really enjoying the attention as the mother, receiving all the sympathy. But it's still not something you want to believe. It's still not something you want to think. But
No. I think as a mother, you feel like, no, this could be no way that a mother would do this, even though your instincts are telling you. I felt a definite disconnect from her. She was saying things like her son always wanted to go viral. And I thought, what has that got to do with the fact that your son has just gone missing or has just been found on the stairs? I think that was the following day. And I found that so absurd. And the more she spoke, the more I watch her interviews now, you can see that there is definitely calculated deceit. Because all the organizations that she was working with, everything was meticulous. Even at one stage, she was saying that someone was coming into the apartment. That was probably, and this is again alleged, a decoy, like, I don't want the police coming in here, so, someone must have broken into my apartment, and that's why we don't want anyone coming around. And even the people that was showing her so much love and support. I'm thinking of a gentleman now. I think his name is Mr. Singh. Go and check him out. He's made many videos. Please, that Tiffany did not want them anywhere around. They were helping out with the funeral. They were getting things ready. So this was calculated deceit. If you really look at it points to psychopathy for me, definitely. There's a disconnect, emotional detachment that came through, and manipulative behavior. Because whole community is here to assist you. And basically, there is just such a deep level of deceit here. Absolute lack of, for me, what I saw within her, lack of compassion or remorse or anything, like you said, total emotional detachment.
Ruth, I would not be surprised. To me, when I hear about cases like this, my mind automatically goes to the possibility of drug abuse and addiction. Because when a crime is committed, yes, the perpetrator, the victim, what happened, motive, obviously a lot of that gets looked into, but very seldom does the person's drug habits even get mentioned. And we have to start to acknowledge the link between these senseless murders, senseless violence, and addiction, especially within parents, because studies have shown that crystal meth, for example, used over a long period of time it's like someone taking a baseball bat to your head. It causes brain damage. You do not have, your brain is damaged. So there's definitely a trace of sociopathy, psychopathy, where there is a disconnect, a numbing of the emotions. You don't feel anything. You're manipulative. It's calculative. I mean, nobody lies more than an addict. They do it left, right. But what happens is they do it so automatically that their stories don't often match up. And if they talk to a whole lot of different people, and those people come together and talk, they'll realize something's off here. I don't know this woman. I don't know this woman. And if that's not the case, then yes, there's definitely some sort of personality disorder that must have been
Mm.
there for a really long time. But when I heard about this, that she was arrested, I just thought my heart broke, and I thought to myself, what was this child's life like? Because these things don't happen. You don't just escalate to that. For him to have,
Just on that part, Elif, I was reading up last night on information that surfaced. According to the Gauteng Department of Education, Jayden Lee had told teachers and some of his classmates that he was being abused and he was being starved, and he arrived at the school with bruises. So, like you said now, there is a history there. And this is obviously going to be spoken about in the trial. It's alleged at this stage. And this is still an ongoing investigation. But like you said, this does not happen overnight. So, according to the Gauteng Department of Education, there was signs that he was being abused. He was being starved. And, yesterday I sat and thought about what this little boy must have been. He was 11. I don't know what grade is that. Grade 6, I think, standard 4. You're so tiny, you are still at school and you go home. I mean, can you just imagine, Elif, an 11-year-old?
well, I grew up in Mitchell's Plain. 3-4-year-olds were already being badly neglected like that. When I was his age, I was begging for food so that my little brother can eat, because my mother they were drinking or whatever they were doing, and they were not interested. Neglect, unfortunately, you've got these extremes where substance abuse begets substance abuse. The kids of substance abusers become substance abusers, or they become like me. It's this extreme. It is unfortunately very rife, and with the prevalence of crystal meth and hunga and all of these cheap street drugs, most I'm a millennial. What is it, Gen Z that comes after me?
Yes.
My age, millennials, and the next group, the next wave of individuals. It's uncommon not to find people who are substance abusers. Addiction is incredibly rife, and these people become parents. So, and they're not capable. I don't care what anybody says, because if you're sober and you're healthy, parenting is tough. So it's sad, because the question is, this child was honest and open about what he was going through. Nothing was done. What should have been done? He's been failed on all fronts by his family, because there's no way that the family could not have known. And I know this because I've seen in my community where you can see what this person's doing, and depending, some people just overlook it, and others will step in. Social workers, that's another conversation. So even if the teachers reported to social workers would go meet with the mother, she'd tell them her story, and they'll just believe what she says. The social workers don't investigate, they don't take things further, because I think social work, it's understaffed. You have one social worker with a whole lot of case studies, underpaid. You don't even, the last time I checked, a social worker earned 8,000 Rand a month. You can correct me in the comments if you want. That's a starting career the last time I checked, because my daughter was thinking of doing it. I suppose it depends on who's willing to pay you what. But think about that. A one-bedroom apartment in Cape Town in South Africa. In Cape Town is 15,000 Rand at the moment. In Durban, it's going to be a bit cheaper. In Joburg, it's going to be a bit cheaper. But just think about it, even if it's half that, what about food? Food for the month for you and kids. So, understaffed, underfunded, the corruption is an issue. And there was a gentleman that said, teachers are supposed to report it. But some teachers have confessed that when they interfered, when they wanted to intervene because a child was complaining about being abused, they were suspended and the child was expelled. And then when she got back, she was told, it's not our business. We are not here for that. Schools don't care.
Mm.
So it's so frustrating to hear that this should be done. We all know what should be done, but it's not getting done. And
Mm.
so this child was failed by his family, by the schooling system, by social workers,
Mm.
and it's unfortunately far too common. But her
Yes.
manipulation really put a lot of spotlight on her, and now that she's standing on trial, that she's being prosecuted, and the family's coming in under the spotlight. So this is really going to backfire. You know what I mean? It's really going to expose, and that's what I'm saying. Jayden has chosen his time, and he's telling his story because he obviously didn't have a voice.
Absolutely. It's going to be interesting because a lot of people have alluded to there might be more arrests. And like I said, this is still unfolding because to me, it just seems that she had help in doing this. Again, this is all speculated, guys. The case is still ongoing because there's a lot of detail and a lot of premeditation. You thought about doing this, if you thought about cleaning up, if you thought about, there's a lot of intention behind this.
I hear what you're saying. My opinion, just based on what I see and what shows up for me energetically, when I read this, and I haven't actually sat down and channeled or remote viewed what happened there. I'm not interested in doing that. As I said, Jayden will tell his own story. But what is because this little boy's energy has been heavy around me since yesterday. And what's being shown to me is, I believe, and this is by no means a fact, that this was not a premeditated murder, but that this was an ongoing behavior. I believe that it was committed at her hands, not somebody else's, not her boyfriend's, not another person. I believe she abused her child continuously, ongoing for a long time, and things went too far on that day, and she covered it up. And someone helped her. People helped her to cover it up. And there were so many awful things done to that boy after that blunt force trauma. Maybe to make it look a particular way. Remember when we spoke about Lacorna's case, and people are saying it might be an occult, and I said sometimes predators do these things. They go the extra mile to sort of mislead the detectives. But honestly, I think that this child was abused more than just physically, more than just emotionally, because there's no way that you can lose your temper or take the violence so far that that the child ends up being badly hurt, unconscious, and then you, instead of phoning the police, you think about doing these horrific things that must already be something that exists. I really think that the extent to which this child was abused was horrible, and it just fell on deaf ears. That is how I see it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. The other people, I think that there were people that helped, that were there, maybe involved or whatever, but I believe, I sense that my suspicion, let me say that, my suspicion is that she was the main instigator.
Absolutely. And it's going to be interesting to see how things unfold. Like I said, there was a huge gap. And for me, I got such a shock when I heard that she was arrested. Obviously, they didn't mention her name when the arrest was made, so it was speculated. only on Monday when she went to trial, all of these reports surfaced, and then you sent me those clips.
Yeah.
And I was just absolutely devastated to think that the mother, someone that was meant to nurture and protect. I mean, I was saying yesterday, if my daughter stubs her toe, that impacts me. Um, and if this is, like I said, this is all alleged, a mother taking her own life, a child's life, it's so deeply disturbing, it violates every natural instinct we associate with motherhood.
You know, Ruth, why you think this was premeditated? Because of the thought, the time, the effort that went into covering it up. And the reason why
Oh,
that
um,
is why.
can I clarify, Elif?
Mm-hmm.
Can I clarify? So I think that once that happened, the blunt force trauma, I think what happened after the fact, that was definitely that, there was an intention, like, I'm going to try and conceal this as much as possible. And that is what I think that when she started, that for me is sort of not premeditated, let's say post meditated, because this now happened, and she, for me, her energy was like, okay, she needs to somehow fix this. What has happened here now? She might have gotten a shock herself, and now just that action after the fact, that is what I mean. There was a lot of planning, the cleaning of the apartment. That for me is someone that thought things through, and this is how I'm going to take care of what's happening. Yeah.
Yes. So I think that the reason why there is a sense of premeditation usually means that someone planned someone's death in advance. And I think the air of just of that this case has, that sort of has the stench of premeditation, is the amount of effort that was made to really mislead the community, mislead the police. They were probably hoping the police would drop the ball, but you know what? Going into a police station and dealing with a sergeant that is still fairly new and dealing with a detective is two very different things. Detectives are different, so there is, based on investigation, there's a blunt force trauma, and then things were done afterwards. Now that to the body, so that was deliberate to mislead the police, or the amount of effort that was put into misleading everyone away from her, instead of getting help,
Yeah.
instead of trying to get her son help, or whatever the case may be, I feel is a cover up of something deeper, which might have been happening to this boy long term. Because when something like that happens, your mind doesn't go to, like, you've got to be very calculated. Let me make it look like someone sodomizing. Like, to do that to the body of your own child, that's not just something that you think up. There must have been evidence that of her doing that, or of someone doing that in her presence, that she was wanting to cover up. And if it was someone else, I tell you what, I don't see why she would have gone to so much effort to cover that up. I think there's a very dark secret that this woman was trying to hide. With all of this. And unfortunately, I don't think she'll ever confess to it. I think that the evidence is going to have to tell a story, but I don't think she will ever come out and say exactly what she did and why she did it, because of the level of denial. And I suppose, yeah, it's like
The lack of accountability as well.
accountability. You're right.
I think that's a big one.
Yeah.
Yes. And when you speak about, all of these things, I'm reminded now, she also referred to the people at the gate. I think she was trying to, so there was a lot of, in terms of obstruction of justice. She mentioned the transport driver that dropped him phoning them. She laid blame there as well. In the beginning, some of the interviews, she specifically said, these people at the gate can't be trusted. She also had a go at the police. So there was so much obstruction of justice, all to redirect the attention away from her.
Yep.
And so for me, that is someone that has really thought about how she is going to use that narrative to create a story and redirect that attention away from her. At present, she remains in custody. I do think that, if she was to get bail, this is just my thoughts, guys. The community is, they are really, really outraged because they came out in full force, supporting her. They even helped look for Jayden when he was apparently missing. After she had gone to the police station that whole night, members of the community came out in support of Tiffany, looking for her child. They went around to the different apartments, etc.
And she went.
And there was an organization.
And she went to see
Yes,
mother's
correct.
house.
At her mom's house. At her mom's house. I would have been waiting there for my child.
You can't sleep. Yeah.
Sorry, Ella, what were you
I'm
saying?
saying, imagine you can sleep. You can sleep. Right?
Yes, I would not be able to sleep. The community was out searching while she was at her mom's house. And like you said, if anything happens to your child, I would have been there waiting 24/7 in case my child came home. Because, yeah.
And this is why it's important that we debunk things, because the convenience. I think that she underestimated the level of intelligence of the community, of the people around her, of the police. She she thought there's definitely a arrogance there, where she thought she was going to outsmart everyone, and yet left such a trail of evidence, using the community, using sympathy, and the community probably rallied in support of so many things, fit the bill for a couple of things, helped out, because I know that's usually what these organizations do to help. And she felt that it played into the distraction she wanted to create, to just and that no one would believe that she did it. And maybe it's because her own family listens to her nonsense. Like, her mother went and did an interview, not very clever, not well thought through, I think not very conscious, to at this stage to make a bold claim that she's being prosecuted for something she didn't do. How do you know? How can you know? We are all capable of murder. Anybody that says something like that, I mean, really now. And maybe that's why this woman thought everybody's just it's not gonna think she did this, because it's so easy for her family to overlook clearly the long-term abuse that her child went through, that he was vocal about, because he was telling the teachers, he was communicating about it. He wasn't keeping it a secret. So very convenient to blame the police, because obviously there's always we've got a lot of frustration with the police in the country, how cases are handled, how crime is handled, because we have overwhelming statistics when it comes to crime. And so she thought that's going to play into her favor, that the narrative that is spun out there, that they don't do their job, is going to work in her favor. Then there was the narrative, the xenophobic narrative, which is very common, especially amongst, I don't find that xenophobia to be so common amongst the colored community in Cape Town, but I do know it's quite common in the colored community in Durban. I've heard family members make xenophobic statements, which I've had to correct with my kids, and I know it's quite common in Johannesburg as well. And I don't care if
mm,
These
mm,
are conversations we need to have, because when we have this narrow focus that everything is blamed on a certain group of people, they become a very easy
mm.
scapegoat. Just like with the farm murders. That's why people are murdering their family members, because they're going to pin it on a farm murder or on a foreigner working for them, like with Amber Lee, that said that the gardener was there,
Yeah,
right? So because, but it's so stupid, and it just shows the narcissism. It just shows the arrogance. But there were even community members doing interviews and saying these are foreigners and we don't know what they're doing and they're not looking after our community. And imagine, we've South
yeah,
Africans. I mean,
yeah.
you're a South African living in another country. Imagine if you must be marginalized just because you're South African. It's our ignorance
Mm, mm.
that makes that contributes to a lot of the crime as well, because she just played into all of that
Yeah,
conveniently. Um,
yeah. There's definitely an element of, when her mother made that statement, I thought this is an enabler right here.
yes,
And, you know, in tragic cases like Jayden Lee, we've seen them definitely in some of the other cases that we've discussed. Abusers don't often act in isolation. If there is a community around them, you cannot say that there wasn't signs. Enablers, they downplay or they straight ignore warning signs. They defend the abuser's behavior, like we saw, saying straight out, she's not capable of doing that. She's innocent. How can you make a claim? There is concrete evidence that has been collected. And again, we're going to be seeing this. And enablers, I've seen in many of the case studies that I've read about, they often help cover up abuse
yes,
by shame, misguided loyalty. There is such a lack of accountability when I look at what that lady said and how she was saying it. And if she apparently she lives close to Tiffany, or she was even in the same household. I'm sure there was visits between the two. There would have been contact, you know. For me, there's an undertone of failure to protect Jayden. That is what comes through. And in many child protection cases, we can see enablers, they just sort of on the sidelines, protecting the abusers, protecting the abuse that is happening. That definitely came through for me.
yes, yes. That straight out, she's being convicted, she's being prosecuted for something she didn't do, when there's no way you can say that 100%. 50% she didn't do it, 50% she did. From the investigator's point of view, more than 50%, because they've got evidence. But there's no way that you can say without a doubt, my child didn't do this.
No,
And of course, we want to protect our
no.
children. If my child is in danger, I will kill for my child. And then I will go to the police and say, you got to arrest me because I took someone's life. I'm going to own it. That's my child. But
Mm,
if something happens to my grandchild or my son's wife or to a friend and he was around, I'd hope they investigate him. You know what I mean? You got to do because whatever the reason was, justice needs to be served,
mm, mm,
right? And if you take someone's
mm,
life, or if you commit a crime against someone, you need to be accountable for it. That's the world that we'd like to live in. But it was
yes.
to me every colored mother covering up for their child, honestly. And we know that
Mm, mm,
it's what I did a post the other day where people will blame their problems on foreigners. They will blame the world being dark because of people from other religions. Like Christians will say it's because people are not Christian. And it doesn't make any sense, because when you look at all of the crime, all of the horrible things happening in the world is happening at the hands of humans. You are saying things in inanimate objects are evil. It's so nonsensical, but it's a mentality. when your sons are not supporting their children, and then you still
Yeah.
give them a plate of
Mm,
food and you still give them a roof over their head. They abuse their wives, their girlfriends, their children's mothers, and you will still take care of them. It is sick, but it's
mm,
normal, and it's a
mm,
mindset, it's a mentality, and it's something that we just simply should no longer accept. Because otherwise, our communities are going to
mm,
stay in the dysfunction and toxicity. So I think it was not smart for her to do that. Um,
mm.
and it showed me, it gave me an insight into the type of family that she comes from.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. And I mean,
Yeah.
I see that in my own family too, but I will say, I'll call out and say, no, no, what he did wasn't right.
Mm,
It's a mentality.
mm,
It's like,
mm.
okay, we've got to just cover our stuff up and we've got to protect one another, and children are not seen. We've spoken about this so many times, especially in our communities. Children must be seen, not heard. Children must just be happy that you're keeping them fed and alive. No, they're human beings and they should be treated with a lot more respect, consideration, and dignity. They're our leaders of tomorrow.
Absolutely. Absolutely. This case has impacted me in such a profound way because I'm a mother, number one, and I'm sure it has touched the hearts of so many. But like you said, Jayden is delivering his story through the bruises that he had on his body, through the evidence that was collected. And I'm hoping that through this case, this is going to set the precedent for abusers worldwide. Because when you think of it, like you said, what kind of mother harms her child? What kind of grandmother lets that happen? And now still, after so much evidence has been collected, still supports her daughter through all of this. So
Well, Ruth,
I'm really interested to see.
can we
Yes.
just be real for a moment? I was at a family funeral the other day where all the problems of the world was blamed on the fact that beatings are illegal. I had to leave. I told my daughter, "Let's go."
How?
Yes, like in our the reason the reason why children are so the world is the way it is, and children are so unruly is because in our days we used to get a hiding when we hidings are still very much promoted. Yes, disciplining with beatings is still very much normal.
With violence.
With
Oh my God.
that is just a
So people are still using that archaic way. This is what you're saying. People are still using that archaic way as a means of teaching. They are using violence
because
to discipline.
they don't have the emotional intelligence, they don't have the self-discipline or the patience to discipline in other ways. So
Mm,
even people who don't beat would say, in our days we used to get hit, so they would normalize it. So what happens is when you have
mm,
when you are in an unhealthy place and you can't control yourself, if that's your thinking, if you think that you getting a hiding when you made your parent angry was normal, then you are going to do that.
mm, mm,
So
mm,
it's not, and you know what, there were even times in my early parenting when I felt that was justified, you know, um,
mm,
not to let it escalate too far, but things can happen. Things can happen really quickly, you know. So you have to be willing to be honest with yourself and say, this is not good. There must be a better way for me to do
mm,
things. I can't be so
mm,
frustrated and lack so much energy to sit down and find healthy ways to discipline my children. And that's a conversation I had to have
mm,
with myself. That's why I made that post on TikTok where I said, There were times when I should not have been left alone with my children. And I was not, and
Mm,
you know what I mean? Everybody that saw me said I was a good mother. But even good mothers, there are times when you shouldn't be left alone with your children. It takes an entire community.
mm,
Um,
mm,
Mothers can do awful, horrible things, especially if you have
mm.
issues. But this for
Yeah.
me was not something that took place in isolation, especially with the way that her mother comes out to defend her. It's not even a matter
Mm,
of, I really
mm.
hope this is not true. I've never seen it. I'd like to believe it's not true. This would be devastating. And if you
Yeah.
know, yeah. The mother also said,
I, I, I,
sorry, Ruth.
I totally agree with you there, Eva. I totally agree with you there. I mean, I grew up in Mitchell's Plain, and that was the way people disciplined their children. You know, you were going to get the belt, you were going to get whatever was closest, or the slipper. But it takes a certain level of awareness. And it saddens me to hear that there are still people who think that way, who think that that's okay, because it's never okay to hurt anyone. It's never okay to raise your hand to a woman, to a child, to an animal. It's not okay, because violence doesn't teach anything. In fact, it creates fear. It creates a sense of, I am not safe. The very person that I came here to co-create with is hurting me. That's the message. I mean, can you imagine a small child being um, beaten, or even an animal? I can just imagine the level of confusion that that creates within the child. Instead of having a conversation, what you did there wasn't right. Let's talk about it in a mature way. It takes a level of self-awareness, and like you said, a lot of work on yourself in order to get to that place where you can actually address something without exploding, even shouting at your child. I don't think that that's okay, because you're teaching them, if something happens, a screaming match is the way to resolve it, and it's not the way to go.
I think we must also realize how it desensitizes the child to violence. It certainly did for me. And growing up, I remember, I mean, we didn't talk, we resolved our issues with violence because no one sat down and spoke to us about stuff really. They didn't like what you do. You got hit and you did something wrong. That's why you got hit. Sometimes you didn't even know. You didn't think you did
And
anything wrong. And then there's the violence
there was
adults as well.
sorry, there was a saying, children should be seen and not heard. Do you remember that?
Mm.
That went around in the community. Children should be seen and not heard. So when you did raise your voice about something that didn't sit well with you were met with either shame, or you were met with violence. I was quiet about a lot of the abuse that I endured for so long, because I was either not believed, or there was shame around it. What did you now do to do this again? You know, that sort of behavior. So how do we move forward? You know, how do we as a community, like you said, your family function, there was still talk around that. What are some of the things that we can incorporate?
Well, as I said, children become desensitized to violence, and then adults, you see in the household, adults also deal with their conflict, their frustrations by using emotional violence. It doesn't always have to be, aggression it's not about, I experience passive aggression with a parent that speaks like this. I shout, Ruth, I'll tell you straight. Sometimes if I get frustrated,
So do
and
I.
then we'll laugh. They're not afraid that I scream because I don't use my voice as a weapon. Okay. I'm going to say this. Nobody's perfect. It's not about sitting on a high horse, but it's about acknowledging that sometimes
Mm,
the way you do things has an impact on your children. And then
children, yeah.
creating a safe space around that. And constantly finding new ways to communicate in a healthy way. But you've got to mimic that. You've got to, it's your relationship. It's your relationship with yourself. If there's substance abuse involved, that's already just a recipe for disaster. then it's relationship stuff.
mm,
And boyfriends that come into the household that notice that you don't have a healthy relationship with your child can sometimes exploit that too, because we know based on case studies,
mm,
pedophiles actually target vulnerable family units. Um,
mm,
being a family member, seeing that your family is, I'm involved. I'm not around my family a lot, but if I do get to see my sister with her child, I pay attention to how she's parenting. I will give her some advice without interfering. Give her some advice as I notice her personality, and she knows I'm coming from a place of love. I will confront people
yeah,
in my family if they're doing something to a child. The conversation they were having amongst themselves and having a laugh about it, like it's such a highly conscious conversation. I didn't feel like I wanted to I just left because I felt like, okay, that's the way they
mm,
choose to think, that's the way they think. If I see somebody actually abusing a child, then I will interject. We can't change how everybody sees the world, but we can choose the position we take, and that's what we discuss in a course in recovery. Like, what is the position I choose to hold? What is the space I create for kids in my household? Am I willing to acknowledge, right? And that's important, the acknowledgement. For things to get to a point where it escalates to this place where the child is murdered, and then that gets covered up, and awful things are done to his body, for me, is an indication of a level of brutality and callousness, malice, and sadism that even goes far beyond that. But the reason why
mm,
the mentality around discipline in our communities must be addressed is because if you think a parent showing a child aggression or disdain is just normal discipline, you will miss a lot of things or overlook it.
yeah,
And where does our responsibility lie with protecting who? I just find that in our communities,
mm,
far too often, the predator is being protected and not the child. This child can't speak for himself, and
mm,
so it's horrible. It's awful, 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 and such a highlight. Uh, it just highlights the mess. I mean, we know our communities are very, very traumatized, very messy. We've got very violent. We're an aggressive, violent people. We're bred of that violence.
yes,
Addiction is a big issue in our communities because we know there are studies where addiction was actually pumped into our communities to as chemical warfare to destabilize our people, and it's our history
mm,
perpetuates, and so we've got to be willing to be honest. um
mm,
my mother, my biological mother, was visiting here with me for a few weeks, and my son, after 2 weeks, came out one morning and said, "Ma, you've been here for 2 weeks and you haven't had a conversation with me," because he's used to having conversations. So just another indication. She wouldn't know if he was being abused by me when she's not here, if she doesn't talk to him. She doesn't make an effort
yeah,
to relate with him. And sometimes the older people feel like, well, I'm the adult and I don't need to relate with the child. So it's a very different mentality that we come from, and choosing to perpetuate that or be the difference is very often what makes the difference moving forward. And if we want to create a different world than the one we lived in, Ruth, I didn't eat. I went to school, no lunch. I was hungry. My shoes were gaping with holes. I wore like the kids would bring their old stuff for me. My school fees was 20 Rand that time. My mother wouldn't even pay the 20 Rand. I was obviously neglected. Social workers were never sent to check up on me. Now, what kids are experiencing in our communities is even worse because of the drug addiction. Because this is
mm,
something next level. Drug addicts rape their own grandmothers. It's brain damage. They don't function normally. It's not your children anymore. They're not normal. And you still, you know? So it's a frightening thing. It's a very frightening thing. that uh, things still haven't changed or gotten better. They've only gotten worse.
Mm. Mm. I think that I love what you said about speaking up. But as we can see with this case here, this little boy spoke up. And it is, our communities, even here in New Zealand, we also have our own challenges. But I love what you said about speaking up and keeping your own household safe, making sure that you know what works for you, and being that person that keeps your household safe. When I think of people just used to come in and out of our house when I was growing up, and now I have, as a parent, as a single mom, I have the ability to, screen people before they come in, check them out energetically, and I love that I get to do that now, and protect my daughter, have those conversations with her. So yes, we need to move into the new. If I think of the way in which I was brought up, also with violence, there's a decision that I made when my daughter was born. And yes, like you said, Ela, we don't always get it right. Sometimes I have to apologize to my daughter and say, I'm sorry, I didn't handle that quite well. I had a little bit of an outburst or something. But it's that accountability to say, yes, I got it wrong. I got it wrong. I didn't get it right. I'll try and do better. I think that as parents, that is such a gift that we can give our children, because it teaches them to be accountable. And it's okay to sometimes get it wrong, because none of us are perfect.
Yeah, but I think the conversation that needs to be had, I think it's, and at the same time, I think it's a stale one. I think that some of the marches, some of the protests, some of the demands that we make as a society is towards having the system that is supposed to support families, hold them accountable, protect children, needs to a complete do-over. Because, like I say, in my case, there was extreme, severe neglect, abuse. Not once was a social worker, I don't even know if a social worker was informed, sent out. I had to beg for food. No child should have to do that, especially in a community where a little girl would be taken, would be abused and taken advantage of. There was no support. There was no stepping in. I want to live in a world where we as mothers are held accountable, right? We get to decide we want to have children, whether we are sober or not, whether we can manage our lives or not, whether we can support ourselves or not. We can just have kids left, right, and center, right? That's our freedom. We've got that right. But what about the responsibility? I want to live in a world where I'm being held accountable, where if my son is not at school for a week, someone comes to knock. The bloody SPCA will come here for animals. There's more interest and concern in animals, and I'm not saying that's wrong, because animals matter too, than children, right? Where
Wow.
do you get what I'm saying? Where if a child has a bruise, if something's happening, that someone comes and talks to me, are you okay? And says to me, are you coping? You need to go to therapy. You need to do these classes. You need to, to see that I'm getting the support, that I am getting evaluated, that I'm okay, that I'm capable of taking care of my child. To come in and say, right, you guys are struggling with food. There's this organization. We're going to get you involved with that. If there's evidence of me having a substance abuse issue, you need to go to rehab. You need to have regular tests done. Otherwise, your children have to go into a safe home. I want to live in a world like that. But we as mothers have far too much right. We left alone with these children like we are gods. We are not. We are fallible. And we are messy, and we can be extremely toxic. There's just not enough. And so that's the conversation here, because there was evidence of it. Jayden told people, his friends at school spoke about it. His family must have known, because if the school knew about it, his family must have known, just like my family knew. And other
Mm.
people stepped in. Strangers stepped in to help me. What is that? That takes us to the next conversation: corruption. Why is there
Mm.
not enough
Yeah.
resources being pumped into social workers, child welfare being adequately trained? I've had experience and interaction with child welfare where they know less about the law than I do, and I am a civilian. It's their job to
Mm.
know. They'll just say, oh, the mother said, we must listen to what the mother says. Who told you that? Like, where's the common sense? Where's the training? And I'm sure it's not all social workers, but why are they so inadequate as well?
I do agree with you. A total systemic overhaul is needed, not only then in South Africa, but even when I look here on the side of the world as well. Because a lot of people still have the mindset that violence is okay. We have enjoyed being here with you today to discuss this tragic case of Jayden Lee. We are going to be doing a follow-up soon as the trial continues, to discuss what else comes out in the trial, the evidence collected here. And like Eric was saying earlier, Jayden's voice is no longer silent. This case is going to speak for itself. It's shedding the light on abuse, on so many other things, and we will keep you updated. If you have any information regarding this case or any other cases, please pop it into the comments. We would love to hear from you. And thank you so much for being here with us.
Yes. It's a pity that things have to get to this point for us to pay attention, for something to be noticed, and then it feels quite helpless because it happens so often and nothing seems to change. It just keeps going on. But we can't lose hope. We have to keep telling these stories. We have to keep talking about it. We have to keep having the controversial conversations and sharing our own opinions, our own experiences, and believe that eventually it's going to contribute to enough awareness that things change. But we will keep you guys up posted about Jayden's story and what happens with this case. Thanks, Ruth, for getting together and giving us the opportunity to tell his story as it stands to date. And we look forward to doing more of this. Our next episode is going to be case study, right? Case study of the female pedophile. So yes, keep a lookout for that. Educate yourself about the psychology and the stories of people who are attracted to minors, so that you can become aware of. These are not strangers. These are not monsters under the bed. They're not monsters with long talons and horns. They're human, our neighbors, our sisters, our friends, our brothers, our cousins. And the more aware we are, the more educated we are, the more we can position ourselves to be a part of the solution and not the problem. Okay.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much, Ela. It was wonderful sharing all this information. And guys, if there is something you would like us to cover, put it in the comments, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
Okay.
Bye.